Long before mainstream religion and modern maps, there were gods who rode across the skies in flying machines, not myths, but recorded accounts, etched into stone, whispered through Sanskrit. India holds some of the oldest living memories of them, and they were called the Devas, beings of immense power, wisdom, and light. But not all of them came in peace. Some were asuras, opposing forces with similar power but a different agenda, and caught between them us. These were not gods in the way we think of religion today. They were beings of advanced technology, biofrequency, and planetary influence. Why so many horses in these stories? Because in early India, the horse was not just an animal. It was a symbol for celestial vehicles and the soul's movement between realms. Some say the Ashvins, twin gods of healing, arrived on ships described as horses with wings. The horse was a metaphor, but it was also a machine translation. In temples, you see the blue skin of gods, symbolizing their otherworldly origin. You see halos behind their heads, signs of energy fields, not saintliness. You see diagrams, gears, even what looked like rocket cones. The ancient Indian texts didn't hide the sky war. They documented it. The Ramayana, the Vedas, the Mahabharata, they all preserve fragments of a history far older than we're allowed to say. The ancient Indian gods did not descend in robes and sandals. They came roaring through the sky in machines. Vimanas, craft described in detail from their shapes to their propulsion systems. Some shaped like spheres, others like towers, some with wings, and many that could disappear or reappear at will. They were not metaphors. The Mahabharata describes their movement through the sky, their battles, the weapons they fired. One Vimana is said to have launched a single projectile charged with the power of the universe, a bright incandescent column of smoke and flame as brilliant as 10,000 suns. That line is in the Mahabharata, not poetry, not fantasy, a historical account of a war between gods that scorched the sky. There are descriptions of blinding light, heat so intense that it melted stone, birds fall in mid-flight, warriors with hair and nails falling out, bodies turning to ash without fire. What does that sound like? To modern ears, it sounds like nuclear warfare, but it was written down thousands of years ago, long before any modern nation knew how to split the atom. If we take the texts at face value, then the gods had technology that rivals or surpasses our own. Where Shiva destroys, Vishnu preserves. But he doesn't just sit back and observe. He descends again and again into different forms, into different worlds. These incarnations are called avatars, and some of them don't look human. Matsya, the fish being, Narasimha, the half-lion. Vimana, the dwarf that could traverse entire universes in 3 steps. Why? Because each form is suited to the realm he enters, like an operating system downloading into a specific environment. Vishnu is more than a protector. He's the failsafe, the celestial antivirus, deploying avatars to reset the simulation when things go too far off course. The Mahabharata speaks of 2 opposing factions, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. But behind them stood the gods, guiding, manipulating, enabling. The sky became a battlefield. Craft battled in mid-air. Weapons of unknown origin were deployed, and all the while the gods watched. Was it a war of men, or a proxy war of something much bigger? The text suggests that the gods were not always united, that some followed a higher order, and some broke away. This wasn't just a war, it was a civil war among advanced beings, with humanity caught in the crossfire. Sound familiar? The Vimana Shastra is a real Sanskrit text. It describes multiple types of Vimanas. Their construction, their flight dynamics, even what metals and fuels they used. It mentions mercury engines, spinning gyroscopes, and anti-gravity propulsion using vibrations in a text that predates modern engineering by thousands of years. Some dismiss it as a hoax. Others say it's a decoded remnant of Atlantean tech, preserved by priest scientists and smuggled into India after the last reset. Whatever it is, it doesn't read like myth. It reads like a manual. Below the surface of the earth, ancient texts describe an empire of serpents, the Nagas. Not just snakes, but intelligent shape-shifting beings, guardians of wisdom, possessors of weapons, linked to the gods, yet feared by men. They lived in Patala, a vast subterranean realm, lush, luminous, and hidden. And according to legend, the gods would descend into Patala not to conquer it, but to consult with the Nagas. They were not evil, they were other, and some believe the serpents of Eden and the Nagas of India are the same beings seen through different eyes. The stories say the gods vanished, returned to the heavens, faded into legend. But what if they didn't leave? What if they changed form? What if they encoded themselves into bloodlines, symbols, systems? What if the beings who once rode in Vimanas now move through corporate empires, hidden orders, or secret labs beneath our feet? And what if the wars of the Mahabharata were not the end, but just the opening notes of something that's still unfolding? India didn't lose its gods, it buried them beneath poetry and stone, waiting for someone who could remember what the symbols really meant. If the gods made man in their image, what image was that? The ancient Indian gods didn't just visit, they intervened. They shaped humanity, and not metaphorically. Stories of divine unions, children born from gods and mortals, weapons only certain bloodlines could wield. These aren't just legends, they're genetic blueprints. Some say humanity was split, created in stages, and the gods engineered different races, castes and lineages for specific purposes. Why else would only certain kings trace their blood back to the sun or the moon? And why do some temples bar entry by birth, not belief? Indian temples are not just places of worship, they are resonant machines, constructed on magnetic points aligned to the stars, built with perfect ratios to channel cosmic energy through the land. The human body was seen the same way, a temple of energy. 7 main gates, each one a chakra, each one vibrating at a frequency linked to divine origin. The gods weren't just visiting Earth, they were activating it, and us. Some say the Vimanas used not just fuel, but consciousness, that only beings of certain vibration could command these ships of the sky. That line is in the Mahabharata, not poetry, not fantasy, a historical account of a war between gods that scorched the sky. There are descriptions of blinding light, heat so intense that it melted stone, birds fall in mid-flight, warriors with hair and nails falling out, bodies turning to ash without fire. What does that sound like? To modern ears, it sounds like nuclear warfare. But it was written down thousands of years ago, long before any modern nation knew how to split the atom. If we take the texts at face value, then the gods had technology that rivals or surpasses our own. Shiva, Krishna, Vishnu, all depicted with blue skin. It wasn't symbolic, it was remembered. Blue is the colour of otherworldly plasma, of high-frequency fields, of beings not fully physical, at least not by our standards. Some say the gods were luminous. Others say they wore suits that shimmered with radiant energy, energy that burned the eyes of men and left impressions behind. Art became memory, memory became worship. But the skin wasn't just blue, it glowed, it vibrated, it commanded. And when people saw them, they fell to their knees. Because they knew these weren't men. The old texts speak of cycles. The gods rise, the gods fall, the gods return. So if they walked the earth once, who's to say they're not still here? Not in the form you expect, but in shadows, behind institutions. Guiding technology, wearing new masks. The corporations that control energy, life, food and death, they may not be modern at all. They may be ancient. The avatars are digital now, the temples are corporate, and the weapons are silent. But the gods never left. Hanuman is one of the most beloved figures in Indian tradition. A monkey god capable of flight, super strength, telepathy, shape-shifting. But if Hanuman was just myth, why are there multiple temples where people claim to have seen him alive? Why do ancient stories describe a vast army of monkey men who helped Rama defeat the demon king Ravana? Were these symbolic of human instinct, or were they genetically engineered beings? What were the Vanaras really? Because their loyalty, their power, and their purpose feel less like mythology and more like memory. The gods didn't just come from above, they came from specific stars. Many of them are linked to constellations, Pleiades, Orion, Sirius. Even the sun and the moon are treated like conscious entities in the stories. Navagraha temples show planetary gods as deities, each one holding power, each one influencing human fate. But were these really planets, or were they planetary beings? Some of the Vimanas didn't just fly through the sky, they moved between stars. They crossed realms. Some say they were stargates themselves. Conscious crafts that answered not to hands, but to thought. In temples, you see the blue skin of gods, symbolizing their otherworldly origin. You see halos behind their heads, signs of energy fields, not saintliness. You see diagrams, gears, even what look like rocket cones. The ancient Indian texts didn't hide the sky war, they documented it. The Ramayana, the Vedas, the Mahabharata, they all preserve fragments of a history far older than we're allowed to say. They say Ravana was evil, that he kidnapped Sita, that he defied the gods. But Ravana was not a demon in the way we imagine. He was a scholar, a ruler, a master of the Vedas and the arts. And he flew a Vimana of his own. He ruled Lanka, an island of riches, advanced technology and cosmic knowledge. He had 10 heads, which some say represents 10 activated senses, or 10 parallel consciousness streams. So why was he demonized? Because Ravana had knowledge the gods feared. He knew how the machine worked, and he tried to break it. Sita was not a passive damsel, she was an encoded vessel. Some say she held the seed of the next cycle, a divine energy, pure, powerful, and capable of reshaping entire realms. That's why both Rama and Ravana wanted her, not out of lust, but legacy. Her abduction was not about possession, it was about timelines. Whoever controlled Sita controlled the future. The war between Rama and Ravana was not just about honor, it was a war over a frequency carrier. And when the story ended, Sita walked into the earth, because her purpose was complete. Durga is the warrior mother, rider of lions, wielder of divine weapons, but her story is more than symbolic. When no god could defeat the invading force, they merge their energies to form her. Each weapon she holds is a different god's contribution, a unified field, a multidimensional firewall. Durga isn't just a goddess, she's a hybrid code, a system formed from divine harmonics, a soul-tech interface built to defend the timeline. Her battles are not against monsters, they are against systemic intrusions, energetic viruses, pattern distortions. She appears when the fabric is under threat, and she always wins. Kaylee is misunderstood. She's painted as wild, chaotic, covered in blood, necklace of skulls. Tongue out, weapons in every hand. But what if she's not destruction, but purification? Kali appears when the cycle is diseased. She rips away false light, burns corruption at the root. Her dance is not madness. It's a system override. She is time, she is death, but also rebirth. In some traditions, Shiva lies at her feet, not in defeat, but as the grounding field, the stable core beneath her quantum collapse. Kaylee doesn't destroy the world, she clears it, so it can remember itself. The texts say the gods will return, but not as they were, not with thunder and fire, not in shining chariots. They'll return as whispers, as awakenings, as codes embedded in people like you, because the gods were never external, they were functions. Inside a forgotten operating system called humanity, you don't need to worship them, you need to remember what they were, what they did, and why they're still hiding. Because the moment you do, you stop being a follower and become a force, and the cycle begins again.